All right, today we're tackling something we all use literally every second of our lives but almost never think about, the electricity grid. And it's hiding this incredible secret, a constant, super high-stakes balancing act that keeps our entire world running. So let's pull back the curtain and see how it really works.
No, have you really thought about it? When you turn on that light, you're not just tapping into some big tank of power that's sitting around waiting. You are kicking off a process that has to happen right now, in perfect sync, across maybe hundreds or even thousands of miles.
And this is the one idea that changes absolutely everything. The simple fact that power is made and used in the exact same instant. That's the whole reason the grid is designed the way it is. It's not a storage system. It's a gigantic, continent-spanning, real-time delivery machine.
And that brings us to the fundamental challenge, what you could call the instant energy problem. Okay, so this comparison really gets to the heart of what makes electricity so weird. Think about it. You can store oil in a massive tank, you can put grain in a silo, you can pump natural gas into an underground cavern and just leave it there. But electricity? You can't really do that, at least not easily or on a large scale. That means the entire system has to be managed in a completely different way from almost any other commodity on Earth.
So, if you can't store it, how on earth do you get it from where it's made to where it's needed at the exact right moment? Well, that's where the journey of power comes in.
It's really a four-step dance. It starts with generation, then moves to transmission, then distribution, and finally consumption, which is you and me, flipping that switch. Now, to really get how this journey works, we need to talk about the one thing that makes it all possible: voltage.
You know, the easiest way to wrap your head around voltage is to think of it like water pressure in a pipe. The higher the pressure, the more oomph you have pushing the water along. Well, for electricity, higher voltage is just more pressure pushing those electrons down the wire.
And that is why we use incredibly high voltage for the long-haul part of the journey. Just like super high pressure can send water for miles, super high voltage lets us push electricity across entire countries without losing a bunch of energy along the way. That's the transmission network. Those giant steel towers with the huge power lines you see out in the countryside. Of course, you absolutely do not want that kind of insane pressure coming into your house to power your TV. It'd be incredibly dangerous. So before it gets to you, the voltage gets stepped down at local substations to a much lower, much safer level. That's the distribution network, the power lines that run through your neighborhood and right to your house.
Okay, so we've got power being made and power being delivered. But now we get to the most critical, most mind-blowing part of this whole system. I'm talking about the Great Balancing Act. And listen, I cannot stress this enough. This isn't a suggestion. It's a fundamental law of physics for the grid. The amount of electricity being generated has to perfectly, and I mean perfectly, match the amount being used across the entire system in real time. Not close enough. It has to be exact. So what happens if that perfect balance is lost, even for a split second? Well, the stakes are huge. If there's too much power being produced, the whole system's frequency speeds up. If there's too little, it slows down. Either way, if that imbalance gets too big, protective systems start tripping to prevent catastrophic damage. And that leads to the one thing nobody wants: a blackout.
So who is managing this unbelievable feat, second by second? Well, meet the unsung hero of the power grid, the Transmission System Operator, or TSO. Think of these folks as the air traffic controllers for electricity. They are constantly watching the grid, forecasting demand, and telling power plants when to ramp up or ramp down. They're the ones who make sure that when a heat wave hits and everyone turns on their AC at the same time, there's a power plant ready to spin up instantly to meet that demand.
So this relentless balancing act, combined with its physical nature, makes the electricity grid a truly unique animal. Let's break down exactly why that is.
It really comes down to three things. First, it's a natural monopoly. It would be crazy to build two competing sets of power lines right next to each other. Second, the flow of power is constrained by physics. You can't just tell electrons to take a specific route. They're going to follow the path of least resistance, period. And third, because of all that, the system simply cannot function without that central coordinator, the TSO, keeping everything in balance.
All right, let's bring this all home. Let's see how all these physical realities, the instant energy, the journey of power, that crazy balancing act, all come together to shape the actual laws and policies that govern our electricity.
So, next time you hear a politician or regulator talk about security of supply, you'll know what they're really talking about. It's not just a buzzword.
They're talking about the immense challenge of managing this entire complex physical system we've just walked through.
And this breaks it down perfectly. Think of security of supply as a three-legged stool. You need the capacity, enough power plants ready to go at a moment's notice. You need to transport a grid that can actually get that power where it needs to go without overloading. And crucially, you need stability, that constant, real-time, perfect balancing act. If any one of those legs is weak, the whole system can fall over.
So here's the real takeaway. You simply cannot understand electricity laws or energy markets if you don't first understand the physics behind them. Every single rule, every market design, it's all just an attempt to manage the cold, hard, physical reality of this instantaneous, perfectly balanced machine.
And that leaves us with a huge question for the future. As we rely more and more on variable sources like wind and solar, which, don't always produce power when we want them to, this great balancing act is getting exponentially harder. The real challenge ahead is, how will our technology and our policies evolve to keep the lights on in a system that demands absolute perfection, every single second of every single day?